Yeah, good evening, ma.
Okay, thank you. You're all welcome to our fourth training tonight. Today again, Dr. Felix Oyeleye from University of Nigeria, Nsukka, will be taking us on questionnaire design from conceptual to operational framework. You're all welcome. Please give your rapt attention. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Felix.
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. You're all welcome again to this interactive session on research tech. Sorry, I need to mute some persons. I'm getting interference here. Okay. All right, so once again, good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Dr. Felix. I don't know your name. So today we are going to look at the questionnaire, which is an instrument of research. Please kindly mute yourself when you come in. It's not very good for the air. Okay.
The noise is too much at the background. I can't hear you clearly.
Can you hear me this way?
There's too much noise on the background.
I'm trying to mute everyone that people are coming in and they are not muting themselves. Can you hear me now? Is it clear now?
Yes,
okay. Please, some are coming in, they are not muting themselves. All right. So, once again, you're all welcome. And today, without wasting much time, we want to discuss questionnaire as an instrument of research. But before I go into today's discussion, I need to quickly establish a clarity on the last topic we discussed. That was on PowerPoint and slide creation. Now, there are a few things I said, among which I actually mentioned the issue of impact at opening. I hope you can hear me. Just indicate with an emoji if you can hear me on the chat space. I think that would be better. Let me activate the chat space so that I can see. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So I said something in that particular session. I talked about impact at opening. Now, this does not necessarily mean that you are going to create a slide and title it impact at opening. It simply means that the first slide you'll be projecting to your audience, you could title it introduction, you may call it background, you may give it different name. But the goal is to establish an impact at the opening of your presentation. So that is the goal of that particular concept. So today we're going to go straight to questionnaire as an instrument of research. So in a couple of minutes, I'll be sharing my slide. Is my background still noisy? Please let me know if the background is
Yes, it is. It seems someone is speaking.
as well. So it's quite difficult to distinguish your voice from the other person.
It's okay.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, I'm with you, ma'am.
Dr. Felix.
Yes, I'm with you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, is the TV on there or radio?
I'm in a church premises.
Wow.
I
It's
have a
noisy.
church. I have a church close to me here.
Wow.
What do we do? Is it manageable, or do I have to completely relocate?
In your Zoom settings, you can, I think there's a setting for noise reduction. If you set it to high, that might help. I don't know.
Where do you get such setting? I'm trying to establish that here.
So if you go to audio and then audio profile, you will see background noise suppression. And then if you select high, maybe that helps.
Okay, let me try on that. Probably that will be in a paid account.
No, so where you have the mute button down, if you click on that up arrow, that that sign, the arrow there,
Yeah,
it should take you to the settings.
I'm at audio settings already.
Yes, okay, and then you see audio profile. And then just on that audio profile, you see background noise suppression.
There's no such here.
Ah, okay.
Background noise suppression. You have learn more. Okay, probably I put it at low. Okay. Okay. I've set it at low. Can you still hear
High.
it?
You want it to be high.
Okay. Okay. So has it made any effects? Any difference? No. Hello? Can we all hear me?
Yeah, I mean, maybe others should comment, but I think it's a bit better.
Is it better?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Yes, okay, okay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So I'm muting everybody back now. So I will attempt to share my slide again. I will attempt to share my slide. Can you all see my slide? Can we all see my slide?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, great. So today, once again, we are going to be discussing the questionnaire as an instrument of research. To much extent, in veterinary medicine, the use of questionnaire is becoming increasingly valuable. And of course, generally in medical sciences, there are times you want to measure certain concepts that will further shed light to maybe an experimental research you are out to conduct. So that makes questionnaire a very important tool in research. And interestingly, for those of us in Dr. Sanders' group, we just publish an article that's likely an output of questionnaire. So, but it's important to understand the technicalities, the principle of questionnaire design. For most part, I've observed people just pick up their pen, just write something and begin to distribute. Now, this is a wrong way to approach the concept of questionnaire. Even when we see questionnaire as a kind of easy way to get to publish or to do research, it is at the same time not a walk in the park. It's not as simple as that. For some publication that you have to put in high impact factor journal, if your questionnaire design is not properly done, properly planned, you are likely going to have issue at the point of publication. I've seen instances where some research that a lot was spent on was actually abandoned or probably thrown out because of poor questionnaire design. So questionnaire design is very, very important, very, very key. Please excuse me, I'm getting a distraction somewhere around me. Just give me a moment. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry,
I
I
hear
have
you,
to
sir.
address, because the noise is already disturbing me, even myself here. So, like I was saying, that questionnaire design is quite an instructive field that requires much understanding of how to go about it. So let's dive into the whole discussion itself. Okay. Number one, there is really no scientific principle, of course, that we say can guarantee an ideal questionnaire. And that is why I put it this way, that it's more of an act that is perfected by experience. There's really no hard and fast rule about designing questionnaire. But the more time you put into it, the more experience you get to gain. When you tend to publish article that you gather the data using the instrument of questionnaire, and you had some back and forth with editors of journals and all that, with time you get to understand the principle that should actually guide your design of questionnaire. But beyond that, it is an instrument itself. The questionnaire itself is referred to as instrument of data collection. And the best questionnaire is a function of collaboratory effort. It simply means an individual cannot just sit down and come up with questionnaire and design a questionnaire all alone and begin to administer it. that would be against the fundamental principle of designing questionnaire. So there's a place of collaboration in designing questionnaire. We have different stakeholders, from the researcher himself to the statisticians to experts in that field of study. Very, very important. They have a part to play in the design of questionnaire. And the third point here is that there are also statistical tools that we could employ for testing, for establishing uniformity or baseline in the design of questionnaire. We're going to discuss much of that in a while. So, the concepts. Of course, your questionnaire design starts from a clear understanding of the objective of your research. Many people come about or go about designing questionnaire without clearly stated objective for that questionnaire. In my experience in working with questionnaire and working with students, many times I see students bring questionnaire to me, even after they have been to the field. They've gone to the field, they've gathered in some sort of data, and then they bring them to me, number one, to help them analyze. I said, no, that is not how to do it. Before you go to the field, it is important you establish what are you out to measure on the field, and how do you hope to even analyze what you are going out to measure. So the starting point of questionnaire design is from the objective of the research itself, which must be clearly stated. The RO and the RQ. Of course, the objective is what translates, that's what we reframe in form of question. We're going to see a couple of examples like that. Now, this is an example of a set of research questions. Is pathogenic E. coli present in beef, equipment, water during slaughter process from the two selected amateur? Now, looking at this set of questions, you will agree with me that number one and number two are essentially experimental work. It simply means these are research questions you cannot answer by the use of questionnaire. Why, when you look at the third question, what is the level of knowledge, or how knowledgeable? I think that there's a need to reframe that statement there. The level of knowledge, attitude, and risk practices among slaughterhouse workers that affect the human health. Now, obviously, the third research question here is what we can use the instrument of questionnaire to measure. So in the analysis of your questionnaire, your research questionnaire, you must be able to establish which one is appropriate for the use of your questionnaire. And the next thing, we have another example here. We have what is the prevalence of osmosis among unconfined dogs in Ebonyi. Of course, question on prevalence will be more of experimental work, while that of risk factor associated with it in Delta State would be a kind of research question that questionnaire can help us to answer. While the fourth one, perception of people in the study area of COVID-19. So here we are measuring perception, number three. Number two, we are measuring the risk factor. Number one is prevalence. Prevalence will be experimental essentially, because you are going to be taking sample and going to be screening the dogs. When the second case is more of asking questions, common practices maybe around the area and things that could predispose the animal to trypanosomosis. Now, while the third question is also more of measuring certain quality of perception, thinking, thoughts among the people. The section is running down, immediately terminates. Please I'm going to send a new link through which you can join again. So, but essentially, when you look at those research questions I outlined, you will see instance whereby we are to measure knowledge. At another point, we are to measure, we could be measuring attitude, and we could be talking about perception, practices, or even satisfaction. Maybe in area of social sciences, you want to find out customer satisfaction with a particular style of doing things, or maybe business idea or concept. So these concepts, we are to use the instrument of questionnaire to design the instrument of questionnaire around are referred to as dimensions in questionnaire design. We refer to them as dimensions. So the knowledge there is a dimension, the attitude there is a dimension you want to measure, the perception is a dimension, practices, satisfaction, these are dimensions. Now, when you begin to craft your question, for instance, you want to establish the knowledge of someone about protective measure against COVID-19, and you want to begin to ask basic questions. Maybe you want to establish his knowledge about COVID-19. What do you understand by COVID-19? That question you've actually constructed is what we refer to as item. That's an item in questionnaire design. Okay, so one important thing is this: in a bid to measure the knowledge of the individual on a particular subject, concept, or infection, or whatever, it is important to know that effective measurement will require the basic number of items. Before you can say somebody understands what COVID-19 is, you may have asked maybe a couple of questions, maybe like 4, like 5, about what do you understand by COVID-19? Is it infectious? Is it transmissible? Can people contract it? Is it real? Now, at the end of the day, when you gather those items in your questionnaire, you must be able to see if this individual can effectively answer this question. We can judge the knowledge of this individual. So it is important to begin to understand that in the use of questionnaire, the dimension you have to measure must be effectively designed in such a way that the item you come up with will clearly measure that dimension. If you have to measure perception of someone about maybe biosecurity measure, now the item must be sufficient. For instance, it's like saying I want to kill an elephant. If I cut the leg, if I throw a puncture maybe on the head, the question is, after doing a series of things, will the elephant die? So the action I am to take must be sufficient enough to terminate the life of the elephant. That is what we mean by the item must be effective in addressing the dimensions. Okay, now, one important foundation I need to also lay. In the introduction, I mentioned that there are statistical tools. While there is no hard and fast rule about designing questionnaire, while questionnaire design is a product of experience and art perfected by experience, it's also important to understand there are statistical tools that are like a guide for you to have a very good instrument, or for your instrument to be considered acceptable. And these are what we're going to be discussing in the area of statistics. I describe them as tools that are meant to check the integrity of your instrument. Okay? They are there to check the integrity of our instruments in questionnaire design. The first one is the pre-test. The second one is the pilot test. I want to believe many of us have heard pre-test and pilot test before. But let's begin to look at why the need for pre-test and pilot tests. In the first place, our pre-test is designed to measure is a measure of the validity of our instrument. And your questionnaire, again, I said it is described as an instrument. So an instrument for your data collection is an instrument for your judgment, for your inference, and everything as regards that particular research. So, while again, we also have the pilot test. The pilot test is a measure of reliability of that your instrument. So the pre-test measure of validity, pilot test measure of reliability. Now, these are just technical terms, but what do they mean in actual terms? Number one, the pre-test measuring validity implies that we want to establish if this instrument we have designed can actually measure what it claims to measure. Being able to measure what it claims to measure. That is what we mean by measure of validity. Can it measure what we intend it to measure? We have designed this questionnaire. Our goal is to measure the hesitance to COVID-19 vaccine, or to measure the acceptance of COVID-19 vaccine. Can this instrument actually perform that task effectively? So that is validity. So we say validity is a test of accuracy. Can it exactly do what it's designed to do? Now, while the pilot test is a test of reliability. Now, in a layman term, we are talking about how consistent is that instrument in measuring what we use it to measure. In other words, if you have used a questionnaire and at the end of the day, you drew a conclusion that poultry birds, on the average, begins to lay egg at the age of 4 weeks, at the age of 5 weeks. Based on the instrument you have designed, if somebody else picks that instrument, the person should be able to get a similar, if not exactly the same result. It should be able to get with maybe with little differences, confidence interval, little difference, slight difference, but essentially the same. So we say the pilot test is a test of reliability, is the measures reliability in the sense that we want to know how consistent can that instrument measure what we intend it to measure. I believe that will be clear. Now, let me further illustrate it with this slide. I call it imagery, validity versus reliability. Now, if you look at that slide, you can see this is like an arrow trying to aim at the center of a circle within another circle. Now, you look at the first one where my cursor is moving around, you can see the 3 stars at the middle. This is a case of a valid target, but it's not reliable. Now, we are trying to measure the accuracy of that arrow, the arrow we use for this particular experiment. Using the arrow, we got 3, but 2 fell outside. Okay? In other words, there's no consistency in the result we are getting here. But yet, we could measure some accuracy inside that particular circle. Okay? So, reliability test simply means consistency or reproducibility. The reproducibility index of that instrument we are using. Now, in the second case here, we have the V, you have the stars scattered around, while 1 is at the middle. In this case, we say it is not valid, invalid, and at the same time, not reliable. While in the case